Look who's here, guys. Look who we got. Look who we got. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Face to face.
Hey, perfect.
It's our first time getting actually a chance to meet face to face. We got 32 people here in the room.
Excellent.
And they're here to meet the man.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
So first of all, is there any news you want to start with before we get into any questions?
Well, I mean, in terms of news, I think we'll have some news coming out today. We did this week was a really busy week.
Okay.
We signed our NoHo dispensary, and then subsequently we signed acquiring the management company, which gives us an additional 7% revenue stream. Along which we pick up a pretty tight team led by David Chu, who was a former Adidas exec, Harvard grad.
Oh, wow.
And then we also, so those were two things we signed. I'm hoping to close those next week.
Is that all being done here in Canada?
No, that was in California.
Okay, because you're all over the place.
That's right. So it was.
And you're here in Vancouver. So
no, I'm in Vancouver.
You're in Vancouver doing business in the US.
I'll tell you. So
I like it.
So I'll be going down Monday to meet with the DCR, which heads up, cannabis in Los Angeles, and get that thing hopefully closed next week, and then begin construction quickly thereafter. And it's a great location. Arguably, it's the best location in the North Hollywood area.
Wow, that's great.
Estimates range from $8 million a year annually, upwards of $20 million a year annually.
That's huge.
At that store.
Nice.
And that was good. Yeah. And the thing that was really good about that was that we did that deal when our stock price was at 33 cents, and we set the shares, and we held firm, and we didn't reprice the deal. We didn't retrade that deal. And and so obviously they wrote it down, and we actually signed that. We actually signed the NoHo signing when our stock was at the lowest point, which was 9.5 cents. Now it's recovered to, I think,
19 in Canada.
19 or 18. So it's recovered. Despite market trends. So that was something big this week. The next thing that was big this week was that we acquired some software, the Cannabis software, for delivery, particularly in Canada. And now we are sort of focusing on Canada with 2.0 coming in.
Very smart.
Right?
Very good.
But in Canada, when we analyzed it, it looks like the LP area was not the way to go about it, because the LPs, there seem to be a lot of LPs. And even in the oil area, which I'll talk about a little later, I have a pretty good view. I have a pretty sort of a view formed in that area and where that's headed with Metapharm, Valens, and those guys. But in any event, what we decided to do was work it what I call from front to back as opposed to back to front. So our thought process was that we start with the dispensaries, then we list our products, and then we gain distribution of our products. And some of our products are unique, right? So we have the Precisa product, which is unique. We have the dab tabs, which are unique. And we have some vape stuff up our sleeve with Elo Vapor that'll be kind of unique.
Very good.
Where we have some stuff where the coil never touches the oil, because that's something we learned during the vape crisis was a big issue. And so then we list our products, then we do enter into white labeling deals with LPs. And then inevitably, we may actually start manufacturing our own products. But right now, there's ample.
Find people to buy their products. There's no stores. Health Canada's not opening up stores right now.
No, that's right.
So yeah, you're going to have. I think that's one of the biggest advantages of being in the extraction space. They've got all this extra cannabis lying around.
Right.
And then all the LPs are desperate.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're selling it for dirt cheap.
That's right. No, you have to. See, the thing about the marijuana industry is it's not like some sort of high tech or .com industry. This is agrarian manufacturing and production. And so you have to turn your inventory. So even if you have to turn your inventory at a loss, if you don't turn your inventory at a loss at this point, you're going to run out of cash.
Yeah.
So everyone has to turn inventory.
Exactly.
And the critical thing I always tell my guys is keep turning the inventory, keep the cash coming in the door, reduce the burn. Because in this environment, and I gave a speech at Benzinga in Miami. I think there are really three issues, and the three things that an investor has to ask is, what's your strategy? How are you going to survive? And then after you survive, how are you going to thrive? And that is not only companies of my size, say 60, 70 million Canadian market caps. It's the $1 billion ones too, where you have to understand what's the strategy, what's the survival situation, and how are you going to thrive, right? And so that's really critical. And, you guys can go to our website. We put a presentation out that speaks to a lot of that with us. But, fundamentally, the way we look at it is it's balance sheet first, right? Right now it's balance sheet. And if that balance sheet means cutting revenues, cutting expenses, but trying not to take on too much debt. And if we take on debt, making sure that the debt is friendly debt, or the debt is what we call sidecar debt with a deal. So for instance, on the Alberta expensories, we'll look to secure construction financing that's secured by those assets. So it doesn't affect the rest of the company. But right now, right now times are, look, that's, you got this coronavirus and
it's crazy.
People, you look at it, we had the vape crisis that punched everyone really, really hard. And distillate prices are just starting to recover in California. And vape sales are just starting to recover in Oregon. And so that punched everyone really hard. Now you have this coronavirus. Now, a lot of people argue, well, marijuana is a stay-at-home stock. And I don't know if that's actually true, because I would say that, yeah, if you're Ease or you're a delivery service, and delivery services are key, that stay-at-home is definitely prevalent. But people go to dispensaries, and if people aren't traveling to dispensaries, they're not buying product.
Correct.
Now, we have not seen that yet, but we're anticipating that we're going to start seeing a drop in dispensary sales as this moves. Like in Washington State, where I live, it's right now an endemic, which means that they can no longer
state of emergency.
Yeah, they're saying they can't trace where it's come from now. When it moves into this pandemic phase, then it starts to get, look, there's going to be effect, right? There's no doubt about it. I just heard my cousin was supposed to come and have dinner with me here in Vancouver, and I'm here actually closing the Cannabis deal, right? And looking at some other technology now that I can get at a fire sale.
Great.
But the
taking advantage and acquiring business while everything is at the lowest point.
Correct. And trying to do it in such a way where we have milestone-based payments, and trying to hold the line on deals we cut at 33 cents and above. Like Buffalo was cut at 50 cents, and that's signed and pending closing. Just got to get one central bank stamp, and it's closed. But holding the line, which we've been able to do without many retrades. We haven't had a retrade yet. CanMart wasn't a retrade. And it's just that people have to sort of believe in the vision, and we have to be firm on the line. Otherwise, we drop the deal.
Personally, I've been watching this market for many years, and even before the cannabis sector became like headline news in 2017, right. I knew about cannabis stocks before you could even deposit them, because people were excited about it because they got a lot of liquidity, and someone could put cannabis in their press release, stock would move. Right. But you couldn't even deposit the stock, nobody would take it. So we've gone a really long way. Now, here we are in 2020, and what I've noticed in 2019, gold started to run. Right. And when gold started to run, cannabis went down. Well, when cannabis made its run in 2017, gold died. Right. So isn't it interesting that 2 years later, gold started to run while cannabis started to fall? So what I have a feeling is we're going to see gold go on a run, but at some point it's going to come back. And when it does is when we're going to see cannabis explode. It's just the process. It's almost like it's like momentum. And right now the momentum is with gold because it's the safe haven because of the coronavirus. Right. But at some point they're going to find a cure. They're going to find a vaccine. Right. The coronavirus will become, yesterday's news. Gold might, retract a little bit. And then maybe that's when we're going to see cannabis not just do well, but I think cannabis will explode. Similar to what we've seen gold do in the last year. Like if you look at the charts of gold stocks, they've exploded. I mean, there's quite a few that have gone up
my
1,000%,
God.
right?
Of course.
And nobody really talked about it because over the last year, the markets have been nuts, right? Like everything was up,
right?
Pretty much except for cannabis.
Correct.
Over the last year.
Correct.
Now we're in this stage where markets are at all-time high. Now they're coming back a little bit with the coronavirus, so nobody really knows what's going to happen.
Right.
Would you agree?
No.
Like any analyst that says he knows what's going to happen on Monday is lying.
No, of course not.
Nobody has a clue what's going to happen.
No.
One day up, next day down. One day up, the next day down. 7 red days in a row.
Right.
A whole month of green. Like this is what the market's been.
It's
crazy.
The only thing I would buy is the volatility index.
Yeah, the VIX. Buy the VIX. Buy the VIX, right?
But no, but what you said about cannabis and gold is a pretty logical thing, because cannabis is a risk on stock and gold is a risk off commodity. And so you would see them move in inverse. They're inversely correlated.
Correct.
Because of that reason.
And because gold has been screaming since last year, for an entire year now, it's been screaming. I think that's had a really negative effect on cannabis.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And a lot of people aren't looking at that. Everyone's looking at cannabis and they're like, oh, what's wrong with the cannabis sector? I'm like, well, you got to look at the entire global economy.
Right.
You can't just look at cannabis, and you have to recognize that this is still a new industry.
Correct.
And a year ago, to be quite frank, I remember headlines on TMX Money, and they were literally saying, we need to slow this down because all everyone's talking about is cannabis.
Right.
Nobody was talking about gold.
Right.
Nobody cared about gold. And that's when gold started to move.
Correct.
So it's just interesting the way the market always moves a little bit before you ever notice it.
Right.
Right. And when I started to really notice that gold was flying, it was kind of a few months ago when I was kind of looking at the market. I'm like, oh my God, look at the move that gold's done. Not just gold, but all the gold stocks, all the junior miners, everything. Stocks that were down at 10 cents, they made moves up to $1.50.
That's true.
And it was very similar to what happened in cannabis in 2017, 2018. Now we're having the inverse happen here where everything is down. But at some point, some of these stocks that are 10 cents, like a Halo Labs, that's at 19 cents, will be at $1. The question is, when is it going to turn around? And I think it's an entire sector issue. I don't think it's a one company issue.
Right.
It's a sector-wide issue, in my opinion, because you can see that when Cannabis Growth reports that they're cutting 500 jobs, that hurts the whole sector.
Well, look at that news out of Tilray and Kronos. I mean, you're looking at accounting irregularities. I mean, we're going through an audit now. We're NEO, so our audit has to come through. I mean, our auditors are gonna make us impair, right? Everyone's gonna have to impair. But the critical thing again is to focus on that balance sheet.
Okay, sir, when you say make you impair, what does that mean?
They're gonna say, look, the value of these assets have come down, so we want you to write down your assets. But we have so much cushion between our current assets and our current liabilities that we've anticipated that. I remember my background is finance. I went to Wharton. I was an investment banker at Merrill Lynch in M&A. And so I've seen these trends. I mean, I'm 55 now on March 10th, and I've lived through 2007. I've lived through 1999 and 2000. And one thing I've noticed is great fortunes are made in these times, right? You had, I don't know how many cannabis stocks today hit all-time lows, continually all-time lows.
Aurora is at like $1.50 or something.
That's right.
Crazy.
And so the point is that this is, if you're a buyer, and this is sort of a time that if you have conviction, this is when you sort of step in. Right?
Totally.
Because I was speaking to Todd Shapiro, the radio show host, yesterday. He's doing a deal in Holland now, and with the psychedelics and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And he says called Red Light, and he was saying to me that he told, he recommended to a lot of people. He said, look, Halo at 9 cents, this is a buy, and he said a lot of my friends are really happy. He said they're probably out of the stock at 18 or 19 cents, which is fine.
Double your money.
What's
and wrong
I'm
with
like,
that?
fine, all the news isn't going to be good from any of us, but on balance, we're trying to do stuff now because assets, everything's gone down, everything's depreciated.
Correct.
So there are assets to buy. And the one thing the vape crisis taught us as a company was to be dependent on oil only in something that could be banned by the FDA, right? It could even be banned up here. was a dangerous strategy.
Absolutely.
In the sense, because 50%
like
of the
CBD?
market,
You're talking about CBD?
because remember when the vape crisis hit, they imposed bans on, for instance, Oregon imposed a ban on any products with natural terpenes other than cannabis derived. Okay. It caused us and everyone to pull millions. It caused, remember, the Select deal with Kiran to reprice from $1 billion to $250 million. And that barely got done because they got fined $150,000 because they were selling, natural, non-botanical terp products. And we pulled everything off. But then we said to ourselves, God, we got farms. We actually have flower. Let's sell our flower. And that actually helped us. Yeah, I remember. I mean,
you were starting to do pre-rolls.
Well, that's right.
We
started doing pre-rolls. We were doing flower.
Yeah.
And so now we're realizing that we have to diversify our base. And it's very different from MetaPharm and Valens and what those guys are doing because they're at a different point in your life cycle. You just started. Remember, so where you guys are at is you are at where the market was in the US in 2014. So they're going to have room to grow, but inevitably they're going to hit the same pricing pressures. Canopy's making oil, Supreme's making oil, all the big boys are making oil, right? Aurora's making oil. They have that huge Radiant factory. And so eventually that'll become a commodity driven price. Right now you're making hay. We made hay. I mean, 2016, I remember we were profitable like to the nth degree when we were private. So yeah, you can definitely make hay, but inevitably you have to diversify your base and you have to verticalize in order to mitigate risk. And I'm just so sort of happy because I lost so much sleep over all that vape stuff because California was going to ban, this guy was going to ban. It was very scary. And this coronavirus is very scary.
Oh yeah.
Because people just aren't there. The streets where I live is 5 miles from where, when I spend my weekends is 5 miles from, when I'm not on planes, 5 miles from the nursing home where all those people died. And the streets are empty. Microsoft is shut down. Amazon is shut down, and it's going to really hit the GDP. And for people, and it's reflected in cannabis stocks too, that if it's going to hit cannabis stocks. We haven't seen it yet because in Oregon, we haven't seen it. We're not seeing it in California. We're seeing some growth, but inevitably, if it turns into a pandemic, it will hurt.
All bets are off.
Yeah. All bets are off.
If it turns into a pandemic, nobody knows how it's going to affect the world because how often have we had a pandemic? Have you seen a pandemic in your lifetime?
No,
I've never seen
No. I've only seen them on movies.
Yeah.
It's only seen movies like zombie apocalypse or whatever. My son's laughing.
Contagion. Have you seen Contagion?
Contagion. Yeah, that was a scary movie. Yeah. So no, it's and it's then the president of the United States is saying he doesn't have enough test kits. It's just, it is what it is. We just got to, just keep trucking, staying the course, doing the deals, selling your product and just building a good asset base so that over the next 2 years, because cannabis is a long-term play, that we're well positioned.
What do you think about the deal that Namaste did with Ignite International Brands?
Right. Interesting.
I thought it reminded me of you.
You're right.
Because I thought, okay, Halo American coming to Canada, taking advantage of legalization.
Right.
Dan Balzerian.
Right.
Big name.
Huge.
30 million people follow him on Instagram.
Right.
He's going to come now into the Canadian market. I think it's brilliant because it's like, okay, we're having some issues with legalization here in the US.
Right.
Let's go where it's legal.
Right.
I've already got a brand. I've already got a name. I've got products, but we're not selling as much. Very competitive here in LA where you guys are in the same market, right? So let's move to Canada. It's interesting. I said this earlier today. These Canadian companies better be careful because they're losing market share now to American companies.
Correct. I think that's so. Dan Blazarian's interesting, even though he has a lot of followers. I mean, it's a mixed bag, and he's not really cannabis affiliated. So let's look at California. So his brands in California haven't done that well, right? They just haven't. They've done phenomenally well from what I gather in the CBD stuff in the UK.
Interesting.
Is what I've heard. And I don't know how it'll do in Canada because he's for the 30 million people who love him, I think he has like 10 or 15. It's definitely not going to be a female appealing brand unless.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I watch him a lot, and he says that
every. Are you a young single man? All single men watch Dan Blazarian a lot.
you know, he's a big celebrity, right?
He's a huge celebrity.
Every major celebrity wants to go to his parties. This is what he's known for. He charges $25,000 to get in. If you're not his buddy, right? And if you're Justin Bieber or any other A-list celebrity, you're there.
Right.
But Dan's attitude, and I think it's pretty smart when you're someone like him, is I don't deal with you, or I don't. He says F with you. I don't deal with you if there's no value for me. And he's blunt with it.
No, he is.
He's like, if there's no value for me, if there's not a way that I can win from this relationship, I don't engage in this relationship.
Right.
So I don't think he is going to do a deal with Namaste if he doesn't believe it's going to be a good deal for him.
Correct.
And I don't think that Namaste is going to do a deal with them if they don't think it's going to be good for them, because I really believe they got some strong management now.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a strong deal for both. Now, are they doing great right now? I think both companies are kind of struggling with revenue. So I think it might be actually a mutually beneficial relationship where
it could be.
They're going to benefit off each other's support system, because it's going to help Bills get into Canada. And there are quite a few people like me that know him that will try his products.
Course.
Just because of his name.
Right.
And a lot of women follow him because they want the Instagram tag.
Oh, that's right. That's true.
It's all about the tag.
True. It's all about the tag.
And he was talking about the tag, and I was like, what is he talking about? And then I realized, tagging. Like, they just want to be able to have him tag their name.
Right.
Because it makes them famous overnight.
True.
Like, you're an Instagram model and you're following Dan. All of a sudden you're at one of his parties.
If he follows you back, you're golden.
But he only follows 200 people.
That's right. I know, of course, because he's not. Well, so last week I had dinner in LA with a celebrity, a recording celebrity, a very famous rapper, like top 10 in the world.
Wow.
I'm not going to mention names, Omar. No. And he's friends with Dan Blazarian. And he told me that in Dan's house, there's like, you come in and there are different levels. And so he said there's
like friendship.
A friendship. And so
status.
there's like the super, and he was showing me pictures on his Instagram. He has like 9 million followers.
Oh, wow.
And he was showing me pictures of like the girls, he dated from Dan's parties and stuff. But Dan has like a super VIP area. And he tried to get in with like 2 of his friends, but they would say, no, you can come in because you're the celebrity, but your friends can't come into this area. Right. Wow. And I was thinking it's probably like the Playboy Mansion, modern day Playboy Mansion on steroids.
It's Hugh Hefner. It's Hugh Hefner.
It is.
And he's got the cannabis.
He's
got the products.
Of course.
So people come in, they see the Ignite International Brands products. He's got the CBDs. He's got the water.
Right.
He's got all the products. I'm like, this is pretty brilliant. Right. And then anytime he decides to just put out a little Instagram post, he's got 30 million people that could see that. Right. So, I mean, the branding power there is pretty substantial.
Well, you have like Canopy's done deals with like Drake, and some people have done, I think High Tide's done deals with Snoop. And, I see the one thing, I'm going to give you a contrarian view. So you have celebrities who are celebrities. And then you have celebrities that are sort of marijuana celebrities. But then if you look at California and you look at who's doing well, it's like Cookies, which is Burner and Jigga. They're just shredding it, but they have a cult marijuana following, right? They started with Girl Scout cookies as a strain. They made it into now this massive empire. You have Connected with Alien Labs. And those are names that are not known outside cannabis, but those are names that are dominating cannabis in California. So the view is, do you work with a celebrity? Do you work with a celebrity linked to cannabis? And do you work with something that's more strain or more cannabis specific in terms of branding products? And those are things that we sort of struggle with and don't know, honestly have to make calls. Like, someone may have a huge amount of what I call digital authority. And I'm learning all these terms now, like brand advocate versus, an influencer. And it's a whole nother world. But we have a really good team led by Katie that understands a lot of that. And we're trying to figure it out. It doesn't matter as much in Oregon, but it matters a lot in California.
Oh yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's all
yeah.
about the trend there.
It's
right?
all about the trend.
Vancouver's
right?
the same thing here.
Right. Vancouver, yeah, of course. This place is definitely the same way.
And you know, it's funny because like Vancouver and California are very similar. I mean, here it's still the black market. Like,
Right. It is
the black
huge.
market is so big. And I've been doing a lot of videos talking about how these LPs need to lower their pricing.
Right.
I'm like, these LPs just don't get the memo.
Right.
You know, and I know in the US you guys got the memo because I've seen the prices go down like an incredible amount in places like Oregon,
Right.
places like Colorado,
Oh,
where it went down to
California, it's down to
$3, $4 a gram.
no,
right?
it's like down to distillates at, beautiful distillates at 5,000 a liter. We're selling 1 grams wholesale of 85% cannabis derived terp product at $10 now.
Wow.
And that's with cultivation tax. So
Wow.
yeah, no, California's already gone the way of Oregon, but
Yeah.
that's the way we're built. That's our DNA. I mean, Andreas from Walmart, we're penny pinchers. So that's our DNA, is definitely, to fight at the bottom.
Because there's this big issue here in Canada where there's $5 billion a year going to the black market.
Oh.
And all the LPs are killing each other trying to get market share, but they're not taking that market share.
Right.
So I've been trying to explain to them, like, hey guys, like everyone knows that they're selling ounces for $100.
Right.
So when you're trying to sell them for 140, 160, 180, it's not going to cut it. And I know because I go to the dispensaries, I see the guys in line, I hear them,
Right.
and they're like, oh my God, it's $10 a gram.
Yeah.
I can get it from my neighbor for $3. I can grow it myself.
Right.
And they literally, this happens. Okay. They go to the front of the line and they order a gram
Right.
and then they leave. So they spent $10.
Yeah, but see, that's where you got to be. Okay, so there are 2 strategies there. So there's a little bit of history there. So one of the histories is when cannabis first came into the legal market here, there were only a few strains that came in, remember? And all the guys, from Emerald to Canopy were growing the same strains.
That's right.
Except for
Rockstar or something.
Except for, whatever.
I think it was Rockstar.
Except for Canopy did a deal with Don and Aaron who are our partners in Oregon, our partners in Africa, DNA Genetics, OG DNA. So OG DNA were the only differentiated brands. And if you still, I think, go to dispensaries here, they're the only ones that are sort of what we would call bomb weed, right? The rest of the stuff is good weed, but it's not bomb.
No.
But what you can buy on the black market is BC Bud. And BC
Kush.
Bud, Kush, or
BC
whatever,
Kush,
everything,
usually.
whatever
Yeah.
it is, they can, they don't have the same. So besides the fact, my understanding is besides the fact that they are, that they are at a cheaper price, the other thing you hear is that it's also better stuff.
You know what? Honestly, I gotta say that,
and
the
I don't
biggest
know.
issue,
I haven't sampled any of the
honestly,
black market here.
it's the same thing, right? Like
Right.
you can go to the black market guy and he'll get you an ounce for 100. He'll get you an ounce for 200.
Right, it's the same thing.
And
right.
and what I've been trying to explain to the LPs is, listen, why don't you have a lower price product
Right.
and then have a higher price product?
Right.
Just provide everything to your customers. Now everyone's going to know, okay, I can go to the black market around the corner and get it for 100, or I can walk to the dispensary, get it from 100. It's going to be pretty much the same quality. At least this is legal, it's lab tested, and I'm going to go buy from those guys.
Right.
That will happen if the prices become comparable, because even the black market shops here, they've got the low priced house weed, which is
Right.
pretty much garbage,
Right.
right? And everybody knows it.
Right.
And then they've got the $6 a gram, $8 a gram, 10 gram, all the way up to $25 a gram,
Right.
high premium.
Which is the DNA stuff.
Yeah, it's the high premium product. So
Yeah.
as a customer, you can walk in and you go, okay, I want that or I want this. Now, what gets sold the fastest
Right.
is always the cheap bud.
Right. Of course. It's
Because
we
it's
call
$4
it the bunk weed.
Swag.
Yeah, the
right?
bunk weed. Yeah.
It's garbage, right? So
Right.
it's like $4 a gram or something. So people are just going to buy. You're going to get the 18-year-old kids, the 21-year-olds, the 25-year-olds. They're going to walk in there and they're going to try to, they're going to try to pick up the cheapest because that's all they can afford.
Right.
And then you're going to get the high rollers. They're going to pull up in their Beamers and their Benzos and their Lambos and their Ferraris. And they're going to say, I'm going to have my friends over. I'm going to buy the $25 a gram stuff because I want to have a good party. So I think that's where the LPs missed it, because in the beginning here in Canada, they didn't have anything competitive.
Right.
Now they're starting to be more competitive. it's almost as if they've been listening to me because I've been screaming that this is what you have to do. There's $5 billion out there. You're going to just let it sit there and just continue to take the market's money?
Right.
You have to go after that market,
now,
right?
You know who is a real visionary is John Fowler, who founded Supreme, because every time I'd speak to him, he'd be like, Kiran, I'm going to start doing rosin. I'm going to start doing hash. I'm going to start doing old school hash. I'm going to start doing new school hash.
That's what people want.
And that's part of what we're going to do. We're going to do dab tabs. You can't get those on the black market. We're going to do stuff that's going to be hard to get on the black market. Because in California, still the black market is far larger than the white market. And California's imposed so many taxes that the black market is thriving.
Wow.
Right. It's the
and that's
same,
what's happening here.
Issue, right?
That's what's happening here. I have buddies that are in the black market. They're like, I'm opening up stores, Rich. And I'm like, what's going on?
Oh,
the LPs are shutting down and the black market's opening up.
So
it's just crazy.
This is a great story. So at our location where we are at on Lancashire and Hesby in North Hollywood, I went there, I go there and look and go, okay, you got to look at this location. We're paying money. Even at today's rates, we paid whatever, $6 million for it. I went there and looked, and there was a store. And what we call illegal stores in California is trap stores. I go, there was a trap store. So from my perspective, there's a trap store. So I wanted to see how it was doing. And there were it was Thursday, about 6 p.m. There were about 30 people in this trap store with not a lot of product. And I thought to myself, at first I got mad and I said, oh my God, there's a trap store where our store is going to be right in the same spot. And I thought to myself, this is great. It's going to build customer awareness that this is a marijuana site.
That's right.
So, please let it go for as long as it can until we begin construction.
Because they will come in there.
Yes.
I'm telling you,
they don't know the difference. A lot of people don't know the difference.
Or a lot of people want to try, right? They're just testing it. Oh, this is a new store. Let me go see what's inside.
Right.
Let me go test the products, right?
But that's a huge problem in California. In LA, there's so many trap stores.
Still, eh?
Yeah. Oh,
unbelievable.
It's all over California.
They just can't stop it.
Oregon, they've shut down big time. Washington, Colorado. You don't see as much. I mean, Oregon, there's diversion to the rest of the country. California, there's diversion to the rest of the country, but there's this ample trap store parallel universe that the state, for some reason, hasn't clamped down on fully, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and I think, someone once told me, a law enforcement official told me, it's not worth the pain or the blood, meaning that you don't want to get into a Waco, Texas situation by shutting down a bunch of people. You may want to scare them. You may want to do this, but you don't want to get into a situation where you walk into a trap store and you're in a gunfight, right?
Oh, yeah, that would be brutal.
So those are the things that law enforcement has to consider too. They say you got to look at it from our perspective, right? So it's interesting. No, but it's
I guess it's dangerous, right?
It is. So certain times, yeah, definitely. I mean,
and I feel like that's what's happening here is the black market is not feeling any pushback.
Correct.
And it's weird because I know guys that are on both sides, and it's as if the black market is feeling very confident right now.
Right.
And the LPs are extremely unconfident.
It's because the LPs, all of us, the one thing I always say about the marijuana business, if you don't wake up at, I wake up every morning at 5:30 or 6 to work. If you don't wake up and something hasn't punched you in the gut by 7 a.m., there hasn't been some sort of punch, right? We get wins too, but in this market, you see a lot of that. But, net things are growing, meaning there are more dispensaries coming up in California. Oregon, they've cut the licenses. Now we're on the prowl for cultivation assets because, there's less cultivation where there was a glut. The states are cleaning stuff up, right? And it'll clean up here inevitably. So it's something Prakash Gill, who's one of our founders, he's an endowed chair professor at USC, he invented Taxol, said to me, he said, I think 1933 was the year of prohibition, right? Prohibition ended. He said, how many of us today are drinking moonshine?
Nobody.
So the point of the matter is the things we're talking about are transitory. And that comes back to, what is your strategy? How are you going to survive? And then how are you going to thrive, right? And knowing about the black market, knowing about all these things is very, very critical.
Totally.
And then the other thing is being able to sort of look forward to see, like we've done to see, a lot of people said, we don't understand your strategy. You were an oil and concentrate producer. Why didn't you stick to that? I said, well, if I stuck to that, I would have filed for bankruptcy in December.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
You got to keep.
I had to get the pre-rolls. I had to start selling my flower.
You got to find ways to succeed as an entrepreneur.
I had to figure that out. Then in California, there's so many brands there, and brands like Cresco Labs, which is a big MSO. They're literally, and Select in the days, they literally would give away their product. They would literally stuff the channel. They go and they give the product and say, pay us when you can.
Wow.
And the dispensary owners, because we talk to them, say, we're never paying them. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? We're never paying them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's part of California because there's so much competition. So
Wow.
we're like, what do we do?
Holy
okay,
smokes.
do we retreat? A little bit. But let's go by dispensaries. Let's go end to end. Because who are the four most successful players in California? Cookies, Connected, Urban Leaf, and Caliva. And what do? They're controlling their vertical. So to the extent we can in our micro universe, we have to control our vertical, right? And that's very, very critical to us from a California perspective.
Now you mentioned Caliva. And that's the company that's doing business with Jay-Z, right?
Jay-Z's their brand ambassador. Joe Montana's their spokesperson.
Wow.
They're.
You ever get a chance to meet Joe Montana?
No, never met him. But I know Jim Allen and Brian May, the CEO and the president of Caliva, fairly well.
Very good.
We've done business with them, and we announced a deal with them a little while back.
So I have this idea.
Right.
Okay. I think, being a cannabis enthusiast, I think that it's cool thing to be in the cannabis sector. I think it's like a very cult-like thing because even though the market's down, people still buying the stocks.
Right.
People still support it. People get angry at me.
Right.
When I go into my group chat, I'm like, guys, cannabis is dead. Be careful. People literally get angry at me.
Right.
And be like, Rich, how dare you say that? And I'm like, well, it's just true. I don't want you guys getting hurt and losing money. People don't want to hear that. This is what I think is missing. I'm going to tell you. And I think if you hit this, you will take off in Canada.
Right.
Making it like a club, making it like a culture where people just hang out.
Right.
Like a hangout. That's what's missing. They're making it like corporate.
Right.
They're trying to be like an Apple store.
Right.
I don't think that's what it is.
No,
it's got to be more laid back. It's got to be a place where everyone just goes and chills. I'm going to go hang out with my buddies at the cannabis store.
Right.
I'm going to go hang out with my buddies down the street at Halo Labs.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to trade some stocks at the Halo Labs store and do a couple dab tabs.
Right.
That's where I think this really missing is a place where people can just go and say, a comfortable place where people can go and say, I'm going to go hang out and smoke a spliff with my friends.
Right.
And we're going to talk some business and we're going to go to the Halo Labs store.
Right.
That's not happening. There's a miss there. I go to Spirit Leaf, right? Small store, really nice looking, big lineup, nobody really talking, everybody head down. And I'm like, that's not what I thought this should be like.
No.
It should be like everyone's hanging out, having fun, talking about, what's the biggest news. And it should be almost like a hangout. And there's a place here called the Amsterdam Cafe that kind of created that.
Right.
But I think where they missed is it's right on Hastings. The Amsterdam Cafe?
No,
it's right on Hastings. It's close to here. It's on Hastings. And it's kind of in an area where it's bad part of town.
Right.
So what happens is you get a lot of the bums in there.
Right.
So you don't get a lot of high rollers that want to go in there and, be breathing the same air as a bum, right? So, or sharing weed with them. So they missed on that. But I think that type of store, I think would be so hot. And it would go all across Canada and all over the US and all over the world. And it would be the biggest thing. And we're missing in Canada. There's nothing like it. Planet 13 kind of comes to mind.
Planet 13 is a great, that's the superstore, right?
That's the superstore.
And Meta in Boston, Sunterra store.
But there's nothing in Canada like it.
Yeah.
And we're the originators and we're supposed to be the guys that are, the first ones. And it's why are we missing this? Why? Because it went too corporate. It went too much on the banking side.
Correct.
And the guys that are creating these stores and shops, they're not really thinking about how do I create a place that people want to come to and stay?
Right.
How do I come to a place where they stay and they spend their money?
Right.
And they're going to buy some dab tabs. They're going to buy some cannabis. They're going to buy some oils. They're going to buy some drinks.
Right.
They're going to buy some food. And they're going to hang out.
Right.
They're going to bring their friends. They're going to tell their friends to come hang out.
Right.
And that's where I think is missing. And because I know for me, that's the type of environment that I want to go to.
Correct.
But there's nothing like it.
Well, part of that has to do with the consumption lounge trend. So you have Las Vegas and Nevada starting to do it. You have Los Angeles opening up consumption lounges. I know Bulldog from Amsterdam, where any of us who've been to Amsterdam since we were 18 years old knows Bulldog quite well. I know that they're on the prowl throughout the United States for consumption lounges. So you would have a dispensary and then you'd have a consumption lounge in the Amsterdam or in the Barcelona style. It's just going to take time. This is evolution. And that's what I'm saying. Who's going to survive and then who's going to thrive? Because you got to survive in order to thrive.
But you said it. You said the companies that are doing the best are created like a culture.
That's right. You have to create a culture.
Right?
You have to create an ethos. And that's something that we ourselves are now trying to do ourselves.
You've done it. Like I have people that are sitting there saying to me today, before you even came on here, they're like, I want the dab tabs.
Right.
Like Canadians.
Right. And
want the dab tabs.
Of course. And
so it's gone past the border. People are talking about your product.
We've gotten, again, we do that with ELO, with Michael Linder's company, ELO Vapor, who we're very close with. I've gotten queries, and that's part of what we're going to do with our dispensaries as we start, bringing more and more on in Canada. And it's the perfect time to be buying dispensaries because dispensaries at Tilray, I knew that Dale broke, that we're buying it. Let's say people are buying dispensary doors at somewhere between 5 to 10 mil.
Crazy.
Right now we're below 1.5 million all in on an operating dispensary. Wow. Right. And it's going to get lower. In BC, it's even lower.
It was a year ago. I remember talking to one of my friends, and he said to me that one of his companies he's working with sold 5 dispensaries for 50 million.
It's unreal.
So now a year later, it's worth 5.
That's right. And right now, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's where the market's headed. And that's why
those guys that got out made a killing.
And for us, we think that it's pretty much bottomed out because you're getting to cost on everything.
Yeah.
Right. So there's not much margin in there.
Exactly.
You'll see if anyone has any questions.
Well, we've been going here for almost an hour.
Right.
Do you guys have any questions for Kiran? We are live. We've got so many questions they've been going through here. Let's go to the top here.
Saying, do you have any plans and works to fill excess capacity at ICL9? Can you speak about ICL13?
Yeah, that's ICL9 and ICL13 right now. So those are good questions. So on ICL13, we've put that on ice because that's a lot of capacity. But ICL9, we're looking to build up from a distribution and extra manufacturing as we start putting dispensaries in place in Southern California. It's a good question, smart question.
Luis is saying he's ready to buy 60,000 shares on this. Thank you, Rich, for the pick. Well, good luck, Luis.
Thanks.
Can you talk a bit about the share structure recently increasing?
So the share structure right now is, I think, at about 350 million shares. And the share structure also will increase, obviously, with Buffalo coming in. And, but it's a critical thing of that these deals, again, are because these deals were struck when the market was at a peak, as long as they don't retrade, in our minds, they aren't dilutive. Because they will bring profit. Buffalo will bring real revenue and real profit this year. I mean, we are harvesting right now GACP product that's clean, that's beautiful, as good, if not better, than what you can have here in Canada, in Africa. So a lot of people say, well, African cost is while you're there. African cost is one benefit, and the fact that we have lower cost, but we have a pristine environment and we're growing really good stuff. And the DNA seeds, they're on their way. And when DNA stuff gets there and we have those really L3 feminized seeds and their award-winning stuff, you're basically going to be growing Emerald Cup award-winning strains in Africa,
That's
right?
crazy.
In a pristine environment. And that's why we aligned with OG DNA.
Burger King says, bro, I'd like to smoke up with Kiran. He's one cool dude. I'm ripping a bong here right now.
There you go.
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
And always do it responsibly.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, Franco says, I was at a dispensary today in Toronto. ACB owns the shelves, lots of ACB, no hexo, original stash. They can't get it anymore. What do you think about ACB? Like, it just keeps going down. Like, they're in trouble.
I don't know. I just don't know.
They're in trouble.
I don't really follow it that well. I know that they have a big debt payment this month or something, and that they're restructuring, and and it's been hard. I'm sure, like, Terry Booth left and Cam left, and it's hard. Let me tell you, it's not easy being a CEO of a cannabis company these days.
Yeah, I was saying that, like, being a CEO of this company's got to be one of the most highest pressured positions that you could be in, because you're in a sector that it's a hyper growth sector, but it's under a ton of pressure.
Right.
Selling pressure, short pressure. I'm sure there's institutional pressure. There's investment
shareholder pressure,
yeah.
Director pressure, regulator pressure, exchange pressure. Everyone, when things go down, everyone gets, everyone starts, but it's good. You're crossing the T's, dotting the I's.
What do you think about MMED, the new psychedelics company that went public this week?
I actually
on the new exchange.
I actually had a meeting with Bruce Linton, who's one of the sponsors of that at Benzinga. Spent some time with him, and it's the future, right? It's the future. I mean, the stocks had a huge run up. Yeah, I haven't looked at it that much, but it's definitely something in the future. But the one thing everyone says to me is, you got a lot of people who smoke cannabis, but how many people take psychedelics? Because I remember when I was in college, I'd smoke cannabis a lot, but my psychedelic use was not as frequent as my cannabis use, right? But I think it's really a medical, it's like really strictly medical.
Yes.
It's not recreational. And it depends on, it has to be in a medical setting.
Correct.
The thing to watch is Oregon right now, because Oregon's going to be the first state in the United States that will it's going to legalize it, but it's going to be very restricted in some sort of therapeutic setting with a doctor, etc. But I think it's still early days. So, who knows?
Yeah, it's early days. And it did go up like 85% on Wednesday, and it came down yesterday. It came down again today. So It's trying to find its floor. One of the things, I actually interviewed the CEO of that company on Wednesday, and he said to me that Kevin O'Leary is involved. He's one of the top investors, I guess, involved. And he said that Kevin O'Leary said to him that if he goes recreational, he'll lose him.
Really? Interesting.
He only wants to strictly be medical.
You got to be medical with that, because right now there's I mean, if one state and a couple of cities have gone legal, it's too early. You got to stay completely away from recreational, except for, that red light deal, which is in Holland, where it's legal and they're putting a GMP facility. But again, it's a limited market, but it probably has legs.
What about legalization in the US? Are we any closer to getting legalized there? It seems like it's getting farther away.
I think it's, I don't know. I mean, the Safe Harbor, there are a bunch of guys in Washington, D.C. They think Safe Harbor is going to pass. And there's a view that irrespective of whether Trump wins or Biden wins, you're going to have federal legalization in the next term. But I just don't know. It's not my area.
I have a question here from Commercial Concept saying, speaking of...
It's not in our remit. It'd be interesting to see what we do, because we're so strong in Oregon. If the laws pass, if there's something we can do. But typically the regulator says, if you're going to do liquor, you do liquor. If you're going to do cannabis, you do cannabis. And if you do psilocybin, you're going to do psilocybin. So it's nothing that we've really thought about much.
Okay. Asher says dab tabs are being made available at Apothecary in Nevada. How does this benefit Halo in their exclusive licensing? Is Halo providing, as I understood, Nevada operations were on ice?
So we have dab tabs, and the operations in Nevada aren't really on ice, but the operations in Nevada, we've slowed down, waiting to see what happens with the new dispensary issuances. And those licenses have inherent value, anywhere between, say, $2 to $4 million of license value. So we're just trying to we're basically carrying the cost of the license and selling a little bit, to keep things going. But it's not a growth market for us until everything sort of shakes out there.
Okay. And Smokin559 says, was Halo in the juice vape industry under the same name?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Perfect.
So I think we've been live for about an hour. I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about before we say goodbye.
No, this was great. This was a great, great interview
Well,
as usual. Always good. Always the best.
Now we get a chance to actually meet
That's
face to
good.
face. So I'm pretty excited about this, and I get a chance to meet your young man here.
There you go.
So guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. This is the CEO of Halo Labs, Kiran Sidhu, a company that is doing big things. They're doing business in Africa. They're doing business in Canada. They're doing business in the United States. They're doing business in the UK.
Yeah, soon in the UK.
So-
Not yet, but soon.
Anyone have any last questions before we say goodbye for the weekend? I guess not. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Have yourselves a great weekend. Stay safe. Make sure, like Mr. Trump says, wash your hands. Wash
right.
your hands.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. This is Kiran Sidhu and Rich from Rich to Be Live. Have a nice day, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye. I have a big press release going out, so I'm going to